So it looks like that vichakshana jnanam or that wisdom to separate myself from that other fellow who is competing on the day zero salary. How do I cultivate that? I want to also talk about the foundation that leads to this. Okay, very often we look at education as a means to a career. There is very little goodness education in our system, but we've always found many examples where goodness always prevails over greatness. As a young student, how do I start to embrace goodness? Please help define what is good education. What should a student look for in an education?
I don't know whether educational institutions to be blamed or the policy framework or the competitive mechanism which has sort of created that kind of a thing. If you go back to our ancestral wisdom, the goal of education is to liberate. Whereas the goal of today's education, as you rightly said, you have to find a job. India is the diabetic capital of the world. And India has the largest number of people in the age group of 20 to 30 who have either become hypertensive or diabetic or both. A student must understand that doing an education is not merely for a day zero job, because I should not have the last wit a few years from now. So the first step in this transformation is to be informed of this. I always used to say every student need two inputs. One is called inputs for living. Another is called inputs for life. Unfortunately, today's educational mechanism has entirely swung into what is called inputs for living. That inputs for life has become a residue in the equation. It has become the epsilon in the your multiple regression equation. It has become the noise part of it. Unfortunately, that is not what it is.
Namaskar and welcome to another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. As we like to think, this is your future simplified. This podcast is brought to you by the Office of Global Engagement at IIT Madras. IITM Global and the Office of Global Engagement stand for everything that's IIT Madras and India that the world needs to be seeing and benefiting from. One of the biggest exports of India, one of the biggest thought processes, lines of thought that India has so proudly contributed to the whole world is our Indian knowledge system, our traditional thinking, starting with what is this world around us? How do I parse this world around us in my own frame of reference? And the last and the most important question, who am I? Very few civilizations, very few knowledge systems in the world have spent as much neuron time on this topic. And if there is one heritage each and every one of us is an extremely proud inheritor of, it is this body of knowledge. To help us understand how this body of knowledge is even today contemporary, usable, and extremely beneficial to bring into our line of thinking, I have a preeminent expert of that whole domain, Professor B. Mahadevan. Professor Mahadevan was until very recently a professor at IIM Bangalore and the author of the textbook on the Indian knowledge systems that is today a required reading in many, many different curricula nationally. Thank you very much for making the time, Professor Mahadevan.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I have been hearing very good about this podcast that you have been doing, and it's only my pleasure to be part of it and share my thoughts on whatever we have chosen to discuss today. Thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine as well. You know, our traditional way of thinking of life is absolutely one that says, go forth, enjoy, go forth. Nobody says live in a forest, meditate all the time. That was, sometimes we tend to think of our scriptures as being somewhat dogmatic that way. So let's start by dispelling that notion.
First of all, I think all that we need to do is probably use some logic. If a civilization has contributed very significantly in areas like science, engineering, technology, we have done a lot on mathematics, we have done on architecture, metalworking, town planning. Simple logic says somebody who says throw up everything and go to the forest, first of all, don't have to do it. And even if they want to do it, they may not have the right frame of mind or the wherewithal to do it. Therefore, by simple logic, we can understand that he is a civilization which believed in the best of living. But then the parameters, the frameworks are slightly different. That's where at times it appears a little deceiving or looking a little different. So once we get that right, then things may possibly fall in place. Otherwise, how can you build such beautiful temples which pushes the limits of engineering some 2500 years back and so on? So therefore, this is not a culture which says throw up everything and then go to the forest and then that's it. I think for some reason, some part of it might have been overemphasized, I think.
So, and the most beautiful part of that framework that you are referring to is what is referred to as a Purusharta system. Please help our audience and me understand what are the Purusharthas? Why are those four the main chosen Purusharthas?
So today, you go anywhere. A very common term that is used is what is my goal of life. Right from the school days, everybody is told you have to understand the goals of your life and purpose of your life and so on. So how have ancestors thought about that issue? So this whole idea of how do you establish your own goals for life is through a framework called Purusharta. So in simple terms, we can say Purusharta is a mechanism or a framework by which we set our goals in life. Now, there are very critical differences between the way we look at it today and the way our ancestors perhaps looked at it through a lens called Purusharta. So as we all know, there are four Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And the way it has been sort of set up is it is 3 plus 1. It's not neatly 4 in one sense. That's why it's called, Aparavarga. That's the word they use. The fourth Purushartha is little distinguished from the first 3. So let's first look at the first 3 and then go to the fourth. So first we have what is called Dharma, Artha and Kama. Now it's very important to understand that this order cannot be changed. It must be strictly Dharma, Dharmasya Anusarena Artha, Arthasya Anusarena Kama. In other words, your foundational premise is Dharma. And once your foundations are laid on Dharma, which means once you have consciously taken a decision to have dharmic living, then comes Artha. Which means that, of course, we need to have enough material richness. We need to have our own desires to fulfill and so on. But they are tied with the basic framework of Dharma. So that's why I said, Dharmasya Anusarena Artha. That wealth which we generate, which does not violate the principle of Dharma, is the second part. Then the third is Kama. The Kama or the desire must be conditioned by the wealth that we can create. Surprisingly, if you look at today, we have reversed the Purusharta. In today's living, honestly, if I ask me, the hedonistic pleasure that the Western world has pushed on us, and we seem to be also seriously thinking about it, it's actually Kama, Kamasya Anusarena Artha, Yedi Shakyate Dharma. In other words, first you blow up your desire. And because you have a desire, find out how to get money. If you don't have money, there are any number of people who are willing to give you EMIs and all that. So, you just keep stretching your desires. If you don't have money, we'll find a way to loan you for that. And then in the process of doing all that, if things go out of control, it's all right to be slightly unethical. Unfortunately, that's how it is. Now, coming back to our premises, our foundational premise. So therefore, the idea is, unless we live with a background of Dharma, that life is not really going to go anywhere. Our Puranas, our Upanishads, our Vedic repository has plenty of examples. I'll just give one example. In Ramayana, in Sundarakandam, Hanuman sees Ravana for the first time when he was dragged into the court. Before that, he didn't see him. He saw him twice. Once he was seeing him sleeping in Antapura. Another time he saw him hiding himself behind the Simshupa Vriksha, and there was a conversation with Sitha. First time he saw Ravana face to face. Valmiki has committed a short sarga, 49 sarga, just 20 shlokas. Everybody must read it. And he talks about such a beautiful Varnana of Ravana. What a great personality. What a tejas. Aho Rupam, Aho Dhairyam, Aho Ravana Rajnyasya. Finally, Hanuman makes a statement. He says, if only this fellow had a sense of Dharma, he would have conquered the whole, he would have been the king of Indra. That's how Valmiki ends there. Throughout Ramayana, people who read it will understand it seriously. When you read it, you understand. When the Rama-Ravana Yuddha happened, you know Valmiki how he described? He said, Gahanam Gahanakaram Sagaram Sagaropamam. Rama Ravanayor Yuddham Rama Ravanayor Iva. He said there is no simile. Because in greatness, Rama and Ravana were equal. That's why he said Gahanam Gahanakaram. What is the upama for the vast amount of space? Space. Sagaram Sagaropamam. Samudram iva Gambiram. Ocean is a Gambira. What is the simile for it? Ocean. Like that, Rama and Ravana's war, the simile is Rama's and Ravana's war. You know what is the message there? Message is Rama and Ravana were equal in greatness. They were not equal in goodness. What triumphed finally is goodness. Such a great personality called Ravana perished. So, Dharma is, if somebody builds a castle of life without Dharma, it is like a pack of cards. That is why our ancestors said the first Purusharta is Dharma. And then comes Artha. The word Artha is very badly understood. Today, people, Artha thinks money. We have to read our scriptures. Health is also wealth. Peace of mind is also wealth. Today, I jokingly say that there are people who earn 7-digit salary and spend about 5 digits in health. Which 5 digit, I do not know. It all depends on in what state they are. So the point is, Artha is not just, investing in some funds, making a little more money. That's only one part of it. We had a wholesome understanding of Artha. We should have health. We should have peace of mind. Of course, we should have a lot of material riches with us. And all these must happen with the foundation of Dharma. And then once these two are there, you just go and enjoy your life. So if people can take these generic goals of life, perhaps that is going to inform a lot of choices as to whether I go this way or that way. If you take students, for example, since we are talking about, should I take this job or should I take this job? Should I go by, in IIMs, for example, we have what is called, cost to company, right? That's the basis on which placement is fought over by the students. I keep telling my students, find out what is the cost to the individuals, which the company will not calculate. You need to calculate. If you want to do that, you need a robust framework of Dharma, Artha, Kama. Of course, then comes Moksha. The idea there is, if somebody can tread on the path of Dharma, Artha and Kama very beautifully, then very logically, that crossover at an appropriate will happen to the Chaturtha Purusharta. So this is how our ancestors has laid the goals of life. The goals of life is a generic framework which informs us how do you make decisions in life, which also includes what job should I take. All that would be understood well if we understand this framework and make sense of it.
Let's double click on the word Dharma, because it's the foundation on which our scriptures and our line of thought has said we should keep our lives on foundation. What is Dharma? How do I, as a young student, factor in? And just to take that simile to the next level, should I be looking at a dharmic aspect in choosing a job?
So there is a very beautiful definition for Dharma. The word Dharma comes from a Sanskrit verbal root, Dhrui Dharane. The dhr, which is the verbal root, the dhatu, means that which beholds or supports or sustains. So in a modern conversation of sustainability, if somebody asks me, sir, can you translate the word sustainability into Sanskrit? I will use the word dharma.
Okay.
That makes it clear. Dharana dharma in Karna Parva in Mahabharata. It's a very beautiful episode. I will not get into the episode, but I will come to the point. Krishna, there are some 10 shlokas in which he defines dharma. Dharana dharma ityahuho dharmo dharayate jagate. Yet dharana sanyuktam saha dharma iti nischitaha. Very black and white definition. That which has the propensity to sustain. Yet dharana sanyuktam saha dharma iti nischitaha. So, therefore, what is dharma? Dharma is sustainability. Now, sir, what does it mean? If you are talking about sustainability of societies, you need to be dharmic. That's why Krishna said, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanihi bhavati abhyutanam adharmasya tada atmanam srijamyaham. I will restore the equilibrium. System has gone out of control. I will have to restore it. So, dharma means sustainability. Now, let's come to an individual. You had a second question. What is this dharma to do with my job? Now, how am I sustainable? It is time every boy at the age of 21, 22 should not get completely distracted with this day one salaries. They are all nice. I am not saying, I am not de-emphasizing them. I am saying that cannot be the main bullet. That should be the sub-bullet. We have taken it to the main bullet. I think the question that students must ask is, what is going to make me sustainable in the long run? In the sense, it's not about the job today. It's not about the job even 2 days from now or a couple of years from now. This is my gateway for making a living and making an impact for what I have to. If we have to take that perspective of life, then somewhere in the equation, the notion of dharmic thinking, the notion of the dharma as an idea must percolate into my mind first. That I need to do something sustainable. I will give you an example. In 1994, long back, one student in IIM Bangalore came to me. Sir, I have a big dilemma. My desire is to become a great investment consultant. That's a field on which I have to really want to specialize. That seems to be something which will make me happy and so on. I have 2 jobs now. There's one job which is highly paying, but probably it is not in a way aligned to what I am. And there is this ICICI Ventures. They were not giving me great salary, but it looks like they promises me a great possibility of learning for the first 5 years.
Learning on the job.
So I told him, you have to take a lifetime view of yourself. That is the dharmic thinking there. How do I become sustainable for myself? I said, for young students, I keep saying this. For the first 5 years, the last thing you should worry about is the salary you get. You're investing for 40 years. You're investing for 30 years, not for tomorrow. I mean, I understand there's a lot of peer pressure. I have my friend who has taken this job. That puts me a little bit of pressure. A person with wisdom knows how to manage that pressure. I'm not even saying avoid, but manage that.
So it looks like that vichakshana jnanam, or that wisdom, to separate myself from that other fellow who is competing on the day zero salary. Right? How do I cultivate that? Like you said, I often say this, your integral 21 years to 65 years earnings DT, that integral is what it is perfectly okay to go after that integral. Nothing wrong in accruing wealth, but it is not starting with day zero salary. I want to also talk about the foundation that leads to this. Okay, very often we look at education as a means to a career, but all our education system, to borrow the Rama Ravana analogy, is positioned for creating great people. There is very little goodness education in our system, but we've always found many examples where goodness always prevails over greatness. As a young student, how do I start to embrace goodness? And goodness in every definition, right? How do we start that? And along the way, please help define what is good education. What should a student look for in an education?
Okay. So I remember there is this quote which I happened to see also. Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. In Vishnu Purana, you have this beautiful quote. Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. Somewhere, I don't know whether it is the educational institutions to be blamed, or the policy framework, or the competitive mechanism which has sort of created that kind of a thing. If you go back to our ancestral wisdom, the goal of education is to liberate. Ya vidya sa vimuktaye. Whereas the goal of today's education, as you rightly said, is ya vidya sa niyuktaye. You have to find a job. So you have to. So it is very important. See, these frameworks have to happen to the students. Therefore, for example, I started at Chinmaya University. I was the founder, vice chancellor of Chinmaya University, and amongst the many things, one of the thing on which we were very very particular was, I always used to say that we have two inputs for our we need two inputs. Every student need two inputs. One is called inputs for living, another is called inputs for life. Unfortunately, today's educational mechanism has entirely swung into what is called inputs for living. That inputs for life has become a residue in the equation. It has become the epsilon in the your multiple regression equation. It has become the noise part of it. Unfortunately, that is not what it is. Now, how do I cultivate that? First, I need to have that familiarity and the meaning of that. Shankaracharya, today is Shankara Jayanti, so I want to bring Shankaracharya here. Shankaracharya wrote a beautiful commentary for Bhagavad Gita, perhaps in the 8th century or so. He wrote a preamble. We call it as Upodgata. In Hindi, Sanskrit, we call it as Upodgata. He wrote 20 lines. Why am I writing a commentary? So I want to quote the first line, which will answer this question. He says, Dvavido vedokto dharmaha, pravritti lakshano nivritti lakshanascha, jagataha stiti karanam, sakshat praninam abhyudaya nishre sahetuhu. He makes a very beautiful statement. He says, in Veda, there are two types of dharma. One is called Pravritti Dharma, and is called Nivritti Dharma. Pravritti Dharma is all about, do I have the right skills? Can I get a good job? Can I get a good salary? Because I think it's a very fair requirement. I want to have a comfortable living. There's nothing wrong about it. I want a security of life. I want to put my children in a good school. I want to have a gadget which is productive, which may be expensive a little bit more. I don't think there's anything wrong. Our ancestors never felt anything wrong about all that. In order to do all that, you need Pravritti Dharma. The problem today is we have put a full stop there. Shankaracharya puts a comma there. He says you also need Nivritti Dharma. Nivritti Dharma means what? I should come back and have a sleep. Youngsters, I do not know whether, this statistics is still true. I know certainly 6 years back this was true, 6-7 years back. India is the diabetic capital of the world.
Still true.
Yes. And India has the largest number of people in the age group of 20 to 30 who have either become hypertensive or diabetic or both. I don't think that's worthwhile. Now, a student must first get to know this. A student must understand that doing an education is not merely for a day zero job, because I should not have the last wit a few years from now. So the first step in this transformation is to be informed of this. So he said, Jagataha stiti karanam. He said, you cannot swing the pendulum on Pravritti Dharma alone. You need to have a balance between, the pendulum has to keep going back and forth, which means that the decisions that students make in terms of what job I should do, I think they need to be a little more longer term in their thinking. And these kinds of references, these kinds of examples will only make them understand the point, because it's all acceptance of the mind at the end of the day. Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, wrote a book called The World as the Will and Representation. He wrote in German in 1802. It was later translated into English in 1852, which is called The World as the Will and Representation. So there is a very nice statement there. Now that people have achieved everything, security and welfare, they become problem themselves. That happens because we have lost sight of the Nivritti Dharma. So our scriptures have always emphasized that you need to have the balance of both. Now, if you carry that balance, that thought of the balance of both with me, at the age of 25, I will make a very informed decision. That pressure will wade away in some ways.
I want to go one level deep there. This is not the Western notion of work life balance that we're talking about. This is much more nuanced and deeper than that, isn't it?
Absolutely, because work-life balance, in some ways, it first of all acknowledges work is drudgery.
Correct.
Therefore, you need to counterbalance it with something else so that things. It's like putting something here and the tola is going like this. Put something here and then bring it back. This is not like that. It says both are part of the game,
Right.
rather than pitting one against the other and balancing it. So
And
that
both
way,
are to be enjoyed.
absolutely. So therefore, that life has a mosaic of different colors.
Mhm.
That the deep sense of satisfaction comes when we are able to enjoy a variety of colors rather than going after. I'm a little bit disturbed in some ways that whether it is IITs or IIMs, because I belong to both these systems, so my
Yes.
awareness is a little more on these two. Whether it is IITs or IIMs, the best of the talents, it appears as though that they are all unilateral in their thinking. They have to tread the same path. I think that takes the wind out of the very idea of what education is.
Let's talk a little more about education. There's a beautiful slokam that says, Vidya dadati vinayam, vinayat yati patratam, patra, patratvad dhanamapnoti, dhanat dharmam tatas sukham. What is this word patra? I think we sometimes, that's one of the prerequisites for a student to really be a good student. Let us talk about patratam.
Yeah. So, in simple terms, patra is a container. So, vessel. In simple terms. In this context, when you say patra, it talks about that medium which carries that education. That is the patra. It talks about that individual who has received a certain inputs in the name of education. If that patra is not good enough, I mean, let's go back to the patra. Let's say we have a patra. The patra is not good. Anything that you put into it will get spoiled. You put some fruit into it, there is some impurity, or you put a little milk into it, the milk gets curdled, etc., etc. So therefore, patra in a way talks about a sound character building. So now I recall now Swami Vivekananda. I want to share. Suddenly this thought comes to me. What is the greatest? Can we ask, how do I know I am educated? Can you give me 2 or 3 parameters? Right. So I will give a few parameters. First thing is, faith and broad-mindedness must coexist in the same Vyakti. What happens today is, if somebody says, I believe in faith, there's a thinking this person is old-fashioned. He is not broad-minded. That's not true. In fact, there is one Shraddha Suktam, which will come in our Yajurveda. There's a very beautiful statement there. Shraddha Kamasya Mataram. The mother of desire is Shraddha. 3 years back, a Nobel laureate was the chief guest in IIT Madras convocation. So I was having a conversation with him because I often give an example. I wanted to check with him. I used to tell the greatest raw material of a Nobel laureate is not physics or chemistry. It is Shraddha. Because 20 years back, he doesn't even know what he will find. But he knows there is something interesting which I will go after. Shraddha is very, very important. So essentially, that faith and broad-mindedness must coexist. Gentleness and firmness must coexist. Compassion must coexist with firmness. This is what education does. Essentially, today, if somebody is so gentle, today they have put gentleness and dadagiri on 2 sides. Somebody can have the muscle to, push. Somebody is very nice, he will sit in the last row, nice fellow. He will not do anything. That's not what education must do. Education must bring what appears to be seemingly on both sides of the coin will be together. That is a goal of true education. If that happens, there will be enormous compassion and empathy. With this, that is the patrata. So in education, at the end of the day, I mean, at one level it is, mechatronics and electronics and applied, all that is fine. Essentially, what we are talking about is what kind of a character that gets formed in the process of the educating thing that is happening in an institution. That is the patrata. And a prerequisite for the patrata is a little humility, because that's a circuit breaker. If people lose humility, then the education does not get into a beautiful transformation of the character. It blocks that. It will be a very egoistic kind of a mechanism in which I throw my weight, because I know such people don't seem to go too far in their life. Greatest people have had that kind of patrata, and that mediator between vidya and patrata is the vinaya. That's how it mediates between the two. And once you had the right attitude to life, you brought the right compassion and empathy to you, I think the world is waiting for you. Not everybody does it, but people who know it finally make it. And we read of such people.
Let us talk a little bit about AI, if it's all around us, right? It seems to be threatening many, many different jobs, whether it will exist, whether those jobs will even exist going forward. And our own, I mean, your own memory and my own memory says, when we were young children, there were jobs that didn't have names that today have names. So presumably, this evolution is likely to happen. How can a young student today understand this world of AI? And if there is an IKS lens that we can use, give to the students, it will be useful, I think.
See, from an IKS perspective, if you want to look at the whole thing, according to our framework and our scriptures, there is a Chit Padartha and Jada Padartha. The world has only two. There is a Chit Padartha and there is a Jada Padartha. Just to give you an example, Swami Vivekananda gives this example. Think of railway line. In rails, pair of rails. There is a train coming, 60, 80 kilometer speed, 100 kilometer speed, some train is coming. You put a small stone on one rail, just on the other rail on this side, put a worm. Right? And the train is coming 5 kilometers away, but it is running at the speed of 100 kilometers per hour, which means in less than 1/5 of a minute, is in 20 seconds, 14 seconds or something, 12 seconds, it is going to come. Swami Vivekananda says, before that comes, this worm will get out. This stone will be there, it will be crushed to powder. Why? Because this is Jada Padartha, this is Chit Padartha. The point I am trying to make is, of course, AI is important. It makes use of the data and intelligently all that is happening. The IKS framework is whatever you do, you may, that's why we call it as, probably in English also, artificial intelligence. It is a Jada Padartha. Jada Padartha are useful. What conquers ultimately is the consciousness, which is a Chit Padartha. So if we take that view first of all, then the fear will first come down. It will not evaporate, but it will come down. In the sense, well, this is a parinama of something. As you say, who knows, a few jobs will come. It may definitely transform the way we do things. In terms of who does what, all that may undergo change. But it cannot completely replace, which some of these AI people in their anxiety and their enthusiasm, they may say, Chit Padartha cannot be replaced with Jada Padartha entirely. The world is nothing but Chit, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Therefore, within that, so many things can happen. I think this will create a certain temporarily some dislocations of one sort of the other and so on. But the Chit Padartha is so powerful. It beautifully knows how to rearrange itself around this and make use of the new Jada Padartha in the way it has to be used. That's the way I think one has to probably look at it from an IKS lens.
This Jada Padartha seems to put on a maya, an illusion of a Chit Padartha. It seems to be talking to us like a very, very intelligent human being. I think that is a source of confusion.
So it's a matter of time. Once we get used to its conversation, it's that Maya Shakti also comes down. So I think that's a process. We need to go it. I am also bewildered by what I see. I use it every now and then, Claude and Chat GPT and all that I'm doing. That is the process, I think. Certainly it is bewildering and it's delightful also at times. But I think don't underestimate the Chit Padartha. It knows how to make sense of it and then rise to the level in which you can put it in its place rightfully.
And in this day and age, we can't not avoid competition. It's just too much of it. I sometimes wonder, I got away very easily when I was 20, 21. Today's 21-year-olds or 18-year-olds are subjected to some extreme competition. If you are a young student out there, how would I parse this competition? How do I make sense of it? How do I find peace there?
Okay. So let me put it in two parts. The first part I'll briefly touch. Maybe we can.
If this episode will probably air right around when the JEE advanced results and all of these results will come out. So I think this is very valuable.
Absolutely. So there are two parts to it. First of all, why is it there is so much of competition? I'll briefly touch upon it. We can pick it up a little later.
Sure.
Part of the problem is the whole of India wants to become an engineer. So first of all, we actually created, there are some demographic issues in this country, all that is there. Anyway, there is, first of all, we have put upon us a massive competitive mechanism in the first place. So anyway, how to address it, we'll defer it for the moment. Competition is real. If 800,000 people ride for 8,000 seat, what else do you call it as? Or in 80,000 seat, even if you put another zero, it's not going to make a huge difference actually. 1 in 100 will become 1 in 50 and things like that. So what do we do about competition? Now again, this is where I think it is very important for us to get back to our scriptural base, right? Amongst the so many things, there are some students who come to me when they write JEE and all that, they just come and talk to me. I tell them that while preparing well for, in terms of the maths and the physics and the chemistry part of it, which is all very important, there is an equally important preparation which is there, which is to say that life is actually a roller coaster ride. And all these competitive exams, as we all know, it's not about what I know. It's about what attitude I brought to that 3 hours.
Correct.
I know quite a few people who have been probably very well prepared in terms of their subject, but they just collapse. The collapsing in the competition is because of a certain mind frame, certain mental. This is where in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has spoken about it in some 30 places. One idea. That idea is called Titiksha. It is such a beautiful idea. He says, Matra sparshast kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkataha agamapaino anityaha tam titiksha sobharata. At the very beginning of his teaching, he started it. I think youngsters more than anybody must understand. It is very important for us to understand that the outcome of our effort, dreaming too much about it, will bring down the quality of the outcome itself, first of all. It is a self-defeating prophecy, which many go through. First thing that happens to a competition is, if I spend X hours of preparing for a JEE exam, right, a portion of that X, which is Y, is imagining what will happen. Will I crack it? Will I not crack it? Etc. etc. If something which is going to happen 6 months from now, about which I am actually spending a disproportionately a large amount of time now, I have already set the stage for my collapse. So therefore, and what is the antidote for this? The antidote for this is for the youngsters to understand that life is actually a roller coaster. You should be mentally first accept it. That acceptance that life is a roller coaster ride. Some days I put the best possible effort, nothing may come out. This is an idea. I'm not even saying that will happen on the table at the end of the day.
Correct.
But if this frame of mind is not brought into the equation, then the chances of me underperforming dramatically increases. This is the catch there. So how do you wade competition? 2 rules. Put the best foot forward. Don't ever compromise that. That's the first principle of hitting a competition.
Correct.
There is no other way. So how can we say something else?
Correct.
Put the best foot forward. The second thing, understand that the world is a very beautiful roller coaster ride, which means mentally you understand, I have put the best foot forward. What can happen can. In fact, I tell people when they do JEE students, I say close all your books for the last 5 days before JEE. Just either come to me, go to a temple, sit here, you read what you like, reflect on something. on the day of the exam, you will perform better than putting this notebook till the 11th hour and then sweating yourself and going in. So what does that do? That brings that frame of mind. I think at the end of the day, great performance is all about mental game. It's not about rational thinking or etc. etc. So our scriptures emphasize a great deal of these thoughts. How do you prepare your mind? Acceptance of the mind is all that makes a difference in this world at the end of the day. That's why our scriptures have talked about it. Unfortunately, we don't teach any of this to our younger minds. They need it the most.
Sukha dukhe samikritva
Labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddha yujyasva papam naivam avapsisi.
I think in this whole process, there is also a second angle, and we have to talk about this, the role of parents. We all as parents have aspirations for our young sons and daughters. We want them to do well. It's swataha, right? It's innate in us. What is good parenting in this day and age? Let us I'll give the parents also.
No, I think this is again a very important issue. As you rightly said, just out of anxiety, genuine interest. Every parent wants their child to be the best. There is no second thinking about
If I can, the parent should also want their child to be good. We are all again back to the greatness that you talked about earlier.
Yes. So they all want their child to come up well, they want to be good, etc., etc. But the problem with the parents today is they haven't got the right you can make your son or a daughter great by not putting enormous pressure on them. I think the greatest role that every parents can do, of course, you inspire. You need to inspire. Show them the sky. You say, this is the limits. Why don't you go? But rather than micromanaging whether they're able to reach the sky, show them that we have a safety net for you. We are here. On the strength of the safety net, we want you to try. Instead of taking that approach, they provide the ammunition to create the pressure. So I think that kind of an approach has more often than not has failed their own objective. With all genuine interest they are doing, I'll give you an example. Then, I remember my daughter when she was, in her fourth standard. I don't remember this. The parent teachers sort of a thing. So every 3 months or 4 months, they let us into the classroom. So the way it works is the student's performance will be in the desk where the student used to sit, daughter or son. You can go and take a look at it and so on. So this used to go. I have seen some parents, they will pick up this notebook and these exam papers will be there. They will go and eat the head of the teacher for a quarter mark. They are now batting for the son. No, I think here you should have given 7.5, you have given 7, etc., etc. So this we will, the way we will move, both me and my wife, we'll go, we'll look at it, keep it, we will go. We'll wish the teacher and go. After several years, because the same school she studied, when she was in 7th or 8th standard, one day the teacher called and she said, "Sir, you are not at all asking anything to me.
You don't seem to be interested in your daughter.
You don't ask anything to me." Then I smiled at her. I said, "If I have to know about my daughter from you, I have some serious problem."
Correct.
I believe that you are well-intentioned and that my daughter puts her best foot forward, which anyway I know how to encourage her. I think that kind of an approach is very important. We need to tell the students, I have a safety net for you. It is very important to succeed, of course. Aim for the sky, put your best foot forward, learn to take your hands off. That we are here to help you. Don't worry, we will support you. Instead of asking what did you do, why you did not get this.
Worse still, the statement that says if you don't get into XYZ, your life is ruined.
I think unfortunately out of ignorance, out of unwittingly, they set the stage even things to happen even worse for the children. I think parents need to understand that while it's very important to inspire them, parents must also have the Titiksha. They should also understand the roller coaster ride can happen.
This life as a roller coaster, as you were saying, the students go through ups and downs. it's very important for them to have a framework in which they can understand how to come back up when they are low. I think the one of the best examples of this is in Sundarakanda when Hanuman is trying to look alone with no support structure and trying to do his thing. Let us talk about the frame of mind a student should have as they go through these ups and downs.
So I will take both Hanuman and Sita. Sita is even more powerful. I talk
Okay.
about both also because I want the girl child also to understand what a strong character this Sita is. We'll just take only that
Hmm.
episode.
Sure.
So Hanuman crosses 100 yojanas, come to a place and start looking for Sita. And it is so dramatically. First, he goes into all the streets. Of course, he doesn't find. He gets into the Antapura of Ravana. He finds two ladies sleeping. For a moment, he thought the one was. It shows the anxiety. Then he realized, what a fool I am. How can Sita Mata be, here and so on. Anyway, he goes all over the place, and he has reached a point of no return. As much as many of our students sometimes feel like that.
Yes.
So, to the extent that Hanuman, in that 13th Sarga, you will find that he goes on to imagine what would happen if he goes back and tells Sita Mata was not to be found. And he took it to such a level that he could imagine that Rama will be crestfallen, Rama will give up his life, then Lakshmana will give up his life, then the other two brothers also give up his life, then the four Matas will give up their life, the entire Ayodhya Vasis will be in great depression, Sugriva will give. So there is a long list. So to the extent he comes to a conclusion that, best thing for me is not to go, so let me just, perish here, either commit suicide or, be in fast unto death and that kind of things. Up to this, it sort of resembles what we seem to be seeing somewhere. Then what happens? There's a very beautiful sloka. Namostu Ramaya Salakshmanaya Devyai Janakatmajaye Namostu Rudrarka Marudganebhya. There is one sloka. That's a very important sloka in 13th Sarga. Now, what is the message there? The message there is when you are at the lowest level of your confidence. I mean, there's nothing wrong. We are all emotional at the end of the day. If Hanuman can go to that level, why not we? Obviously, we will. But we need to learn from that. When you go to the lowest level of your self-confidence, what should you do? We should do what he did. You should get inspired by larger principles of life and the existence of a greater force. These are the only two stambhas. These are the two pillars that we can hold on to. That when we have lost everything, more or less, sort of, in our mind more than on the ground, there are only two things which will come to our support. First thing is, we should understand the larger principle of life. That brings that stock of energy which is still there, which we are unaware of, or we should get inspired by a larger force which actually controls and then pray to that. Prayer has a huge value. This is a Hanuman part. Let's look at the Sita part, is even more difficult. Imagine a lady who has been smuggled into a country where everybody looks. There is on 17th Sarga and Sundarakanda. If you read, you won't sleep. If you read and understand the meaning, you will not get sleep. It is so fiery. It describes how the people looked like. Somebody had, long this, eye was there. There was only one eye. This terribly bad kind of an ambience in which Sita Mata is there. She doesn't know any of the language. These people are so adversarial and offensive on her. All these 10 months, she has no clue of what to talk. There is absolutely no support system. Today's ladies would have committed suicide the second day. Look at the strength of this character. Now the question is, how did she go down? Then Ravana comes and he says, you marry me, Rama, you will never be able to get, etc., etc. 90% of ladies will say, oh, chalta yaar, kya, what do I do? 10 months to ho gaya, gone is gone. She was not like that. There was something in her. When she replied, in fact, there is one 19th Sarga of Sundarakandam. There are about 23 upamas. Pravase kadali iva. That's how it starts. How did Sita look like? It was like a tender banana tree which fell when there was a cyclone. Or a big branch of a tree which just fell. Like that 23 to 24 upamas But in the 20th Sarga, she spits fire on him. Where did she get that strength? The point is, first of all, whenever we are in the deepest, lowest ebb of our sentiment and our confidence and so on, the first thing we should understand is there is enormous energy coiled within. And to bring it out, we should either get inspired by a larger picture or inspired by a prayer to that. There is a beautiful larger force which controls this world. Science is a very small piece in this. If that thought engulfs, if you bring that thought to the foreground, this uncoiled energy will come like a volcano. I think that's what our students must do. I mean, it is a fact that they also go through. We have to bring these. So the scriptures inform all these to us actually.
And in this whole thing, this whole body of knowledge, I want to, before we talk about other aspects of how a student can think, um, this body of knowledge, as I said in my introduction, is our inherited wealth. It is meant for us to take advantage of everything. Let's talk a little bit about how this body of knowledge can help a working professional. Let's say I'm a mid-level manager, or I may be a software engineer. What lessons can I draw? Why should I be studying IKS? What are the lessons I can draw for my own personal and professional growth?
Okay, so there are 3-4 different levels we can look at it. First thing is, let's look at I am an individual. I go through a lot of problems. I may be a great software engineer. I don't get sleep. It's as simple as that. Or I don't know how to handle the pressure which we are talking about. So at a personal level, I want to understand how can I become a better individual. And the better individual may mean different things for different people. It doesn't matter. The questions are the same. Or I will even raise to another level. Every living being in the world, including Stavara Jangamaha, including the trees and the animals, every living being want to be happy. I have been asking people, how many of you want to be unhappy in the world? Nobody seems to be putting up their hand. Everybody wants to be happy only at the end of the day. We don't know how to be happy. If you want to draw upon it, you can go to IKS. This is at a personal level. Go to a professional level. At 2 levels, I argue. Today, in a place like IIT, for example, this is also more important to say that I believe the next 30-40 years is all about intellectual property rights. That's why we say how many patents we are filing, what is your IPO, etc., and all that. What is IPO? What is a patent? A came and told that I know it today. B came and told I know it yesterday. Patent has to be given to B. I'm making it in a very simple English instead of getting into all technical jargons. Okay. Now, if I have to say that we knew it yesterday, I need IKS first. That's why we are losing patents on neem and patent on basumatis and all kinds of. Gayatri is as a geographical patenting, Gayatri mantra apparently in Germany or something. So even look at it that way, in a very mundane, professional, at one level, even to be feeling very good about ourselves to do patenting, let me first know what my ancestors have done. Looks like a society which has lived for 8,000 years uninterrupted ought to have developed a lot of thinking, because they didn't have cauliflower. They also had, or mud or something. Brain was there. Brain was not came after the Westerners came and taught us Newton, apple fell and brain started working, something like that. So therefore, I think that is the second use of IKS. So I have been arguing in many places, if you are a chemical engineer, please read Rasaratna Samuchaya. If you are a metallurgy, please read, the wood, steel and this and sarana, this pillar which is refusing to rust. Try to go and understand the steel making. Indian steel making was very good. As we all know, steel is a ferrous carbon alloy. So either you can decarburize or you can carburize. These are the only 2 methods. From wrought iron, you carburize, or from cast iron, you decarburize. Rest of the world were getting steel from cast iron. Indians were getting steel from wrought iron. And what was the difference? What used to take 14 days will be done in 6 hours. They simply put all the leaves which is full of hydrocarbons, they burn it. Controlled injection of carbon into the wrought iron, you get high quality steel. Who is going to read it? So that kind of a prayojana is also there. Third, even in a workplace, you know, how do I communicate? What does this communication mean? Bhartrihari has a very beautiful expression of communication. Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikari. 4 stages we talk about communication. So in many fields, we have a lot of understanding, and therefore it is very important. Lastly, you know, Gary Hamel and Prahlad, who did what is called core competence theory in strategy, their idea is very simple. The path that you walked is a function of the path that you have already walked. That is the idea behind core competence. I should know my strength, then I take a delta on it. Only then I will do the best. So if you have to do that, our path is IKS. So in many ways, I think we need to take a serious view of IKS. It may take a little more time, which is fine, but we should do it, I think.
And we should figure out ways to systemically integrate this into the let's just call the professional knowledge systems. It need not be treated as separate from the professional body of knowledge.
Yeah, currently it appears that
I'll take one mandatory course on IKS, which has nothing to do with my civil engineering structures course.
and it looks as though that is something different from this. That is like a commercial break. In between, you bring something. I mean, in all fairness, that's the only way we can start, because we need more people to also know how to integrate it and bring it in. But I am sure we are on that path.
Sure. Back to this, to the Hamel Prahalad analogy. Lot of students study one discipline, but the job opportunities are elsewhere. And it's natural for each of us to, using management terminology, pivot. Right? What is the role of pivoting? Let's talk of this model of Swadharma, Paradharma. What was our view of going elsewhere?
I think, see, the Indian understanding of individuals. Prakriti guna sambhavaha. Vayam sarve prakriti guna sambhavaha. The Brahma did not, the Srishtikarta Brahma was not sitting with a cookie cutter. And it looks figuratively as though he is sitting somewhere on the top. There is a standard cookie cutter. So he is sending people all look alike. Right? So the Indian, unlike the socialistic thinking or the communistic thinking and so on, where all are equal, I think all are equal is impossible. These 5 fingers cannot be equal. It has to be of different shape, and only then it is a little more productive. But all can be unique. They are 2 different statements. All are equal is, to me, a very uninteresting statement. All are unique is a great.
I heard somebody say this, and each and every one of us is unique, just like everyone else.
So that conceptualization is called Prakriti. From Prakriti comes Swadharma. Swabhava and Swadharma is related to Prakriti.
Prakriti is our innate nature.
We bring a certain DNA.
Okay.
Each one of us bring a RGB with us.
Okay.
There is a color palette called SRT, Sattva Rajas Tamas, which is the RGB of an individual. Each one of us bring a certain ingredient of Sattva Rajas Tamas, which creates what I am. And therefore, if we can align what we do to that, the chances of us, number one, succeeding, secondly, feeling contented, would be very high. Unfortunately, what is happening today, what we are doing is every one of us think we should become an engineer, hopefully from IITs. Then after some time, we should all become an MBA graduate, hopefully from IIM. I think the thinking is basically at fault. I think each one of us bring a beautiful, composition of something which is very unique to us. Now in Gita, when Arjuna said, I will not fight, Krishna laughed at him. He says, Avashet Prakriti Gunat. Prakriti is Vashat. Avashehe Prakriti is Vashat. He said, you think you have a control? You don't have control. See, there is one Stafford Beer. He's an over-scientist. Cybernetics, he has done a lot of work. In 1984, he wrote an article in a journal called Interfaces. The article is called Loka Samastat Sukhino Bhavantu. That's the title of the article in the OR journal.
Oh.
Okay. And that was written for the Sadavshegam of Bellman, who is the dynamic programming, father of dynamic programming, etc., etc. In that, he has talked about Prakriti. It's all on Gita and so on. He links it to cybernetics and so on. He says, every day when I pass through my neighbor's ranch and go to my ranch, the dog will actually bark its life out until I cross. So the dog thinks it is doing. He says the dog is not doing it. It's Prakriti. He gives that example there. So all of us bring a certain Prakriti. And because of that Prakriti, our Swadharma and our Swabhava will happen. And that Swabhava will get aligned to a certain Dharma, which is called Swadharma. If this connection is not understood, which modern education neither tells nor we are aware, then therefore everybody thinks that I have to become an engineer. For all I know, I may be a beautiful, painter.
Correct.
There is one Kalyan Verma. He worked in one of the software firm. He just one day threw everything. He became a wildlife photographer. Great. He has become places. It is time our parents have to now support this.
Correct.
Our youngsters have to understand what is my Prakriti. We should develop systems in which they are able to align, understand what that Prakriti is aligned to it. Whatever we do, we will exceed.
In trying to embrace that line of thought, I should have the confidence that in tomorrow's India, there is room for me, a wildlife photographer. There is room for me, a painter.
I think compared to 30 years back, we have moved a bit there. I am seeing only that path now. It may take a few more years, maybe another 10 years, 20 years. Today's youngsters are a little more willing. And this once in a while, these movies like Three Idiots are also seeming to be pushing that idea a little bit in its own ways. But I think generally, youngsters are more than willing once they are out of the parental control in some ways. I think the parents have to greatly understand this Swadharma, Swabhava argument for themselves, first of all.
It may be repackaged. There's a book by a man named Howard Gardner called Theory of Multiple Intelligences. Numerical intelligence is only one of the many types of, which is sort of the argument you are making, that each of us has got our own unique mix of abilities, Swabhava, as you say.
No, as Krishna says, Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Why is he saying Bhayavaha? Why it is so fearful? In Madurai, I went to a place. Unless I give examples, sometimes these concepts don't even go anywhere. I went to a place. In Madurai, there is one place where there are a lot of Saurashtra. They are all the original people in textile. They all came 600 years back in Trichy and Madurai. So I wanted to buy some good textiles. I told my wife, why don't we go to there? We have never been there. Let's go there. Long time. We went there. We went to a shop. Of course, we bought something. There was a 35-year-old, beautifully was speaking English. He was there in the shop. So I got a little curious. So I was asking him, how come you are speaking very good English? All that I was speaking. He said, sir, I was working in Infosys. Then I realized that the 400-year business which my ancestors have been doing would give me a great deal of satisfaction and joy. So one day I just gave it up and then came here. So he says the force and the strength and the joy with which I am also doing some other work today. That work is aligned to my Swadharma. Whereas there, it was a bit of a challenge. I mean, I was still performing, but there was always this feeling, am I not doing the best part of it? I'll give you one more example and stop here. I went to one of my relatives' house. If you go to Shingeri Mutt Guru Bhavana, you will find a 6x9 Adi Shankara photo on one side and Sharada photo on the other side in the Guru Bhavana. That was painted in his house. Then we took it there, one of my relatives' house. So one day I went there, there was a 27-year-old boy who was painting. Sharada was 20% over, 30% over. He was painting till 8:30 and then he left. I asked who is this boy who is painting here? He said, this boy is a software engineer in Infosys. Every day he comes here at 6:30 to 8:30 he is painting. Then he goes. Then I looked at him. I said, this painting is keeping his job. The job is not keeping his painting. Because his Swadharma is here. I will not be surprised if that boy after some time will become a great painter. He'll give up. That sense of satisfaction may not. You may be doing a honest job there. Our youngsters must understand that is the Swadharma, Swabhava, that Bhaya, all those are coming from there.
So spending some time to introspect, meet people, to understand our own Swadharma and Swabhava will position you It's like a SWOT analysis of a company, right? So it will give you the weaponry needed to build your own career. Let's come back to the idea of wealth. I think there's, like we said, there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. Let's close with the role of Dharma in accruing wealth. You started to say that is the foundation on which Artha follows. Today's young generation seem to be sort of optimizing for a unidimensional version of wealth. Let's close by talking about the multidimensionality of wealth. We already talked about it, but I think that's a good closing thought. How can a student today plan their life for this multidimensional wealthy world?
Yeah. So I think today's students must, in their own interest, in a long-term understanding of life, must deeply introspect what wealth means. There are wealth consultants who will tell you, if you put in dead instruments, what will happen. If you put in, London Metal Exchange or Chicago Board of Future Trades, that's all one dimension of wealth. It's all about, churning this currency related wealth into a little more of it, etc., etc. That's the predominant Western conceptualization of the wealth, or some immovable properties and so on and so forth. I think today's youngsters must deeply conceptualize wealth for themselves. It's an individual reflected thinking that they must do, which will only do good for them. I think the first thing is, of course, we need the currency. We need these movable, immovable assets, which is a certain element of wealth, because we are in Vyavahara. We have to consume the world. The world has to consume us. So, for which we need some medium of consumption. So, therefore, I am not downplaying that. I think that's one part. My problem, as I told earlier, is we are just stopping there. We should not stop there. The second element of wealth is health. And today I feel the youngsters are very unfair to them. Each young person is unfair to him or her, where they are eating their health. It is time they understand that an integral element of wealth is health. Therefore, if they become, it doesn't mean do a kamchor. It doesn't mean that. It means a multi-objective decision-making problem. I am bringing more objectives into the equation, and that's where the dharmic framework comes. If you are dharmic, you will never do kamchor, but you know how to manage all the three. You know how to make trade-offs. It's all about making trade-offs now. We don't know how to make the trade-offs. So I think the second thing is health. And if you want health, then somewhere you find that the health is deeply related to your psychology. Health and wellness and psychology are related to one another. That's our Indian thinking. That's why if you look at Sushrutru Samhita's definition of health, yes, beautiful definition. Swasmin karmani, swasmin sthane, stiyate iti swastham. Compact definition. You have to be yourself. Don't be like X, Y, or Z. This is what youngsters are trying to do. The Swadharma and Swabhava is also coming here. Swasmin karmani, swasmin sthane, stiyate iti swastham. That is their definition. So we must understand that if you have to be healthy, you have to align your Swabhava to your Swadharma. Whatever you do. That's why I said you will earn 7 digit and give 5 digit for health. Otherwise, that's not a good idea. That's not very good. Third, every individual, the sooner they do it better, every individual must understand that art of dying is far more important than art of living. The last sleep must be peaceful. If you keep that goal behind you, lot of choices will fall in place. We are all born to have that last sleep, which is a German saying. The last sleep must be peaceful. That's the third dimension of wealth. That means you have lived a very wealthy life. Wealth is all about a sense of contentment. In Bhagavad Gita, there is a beautiful shloka. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apaha pravishanti edvat. The greatest river can empty, the Brahmaputra or the Amazon can empty all its water into the ocean. The ocean will not even shake. Apuryamanam. The sense of fullness is the greatest measure of wealth. That fullness need not necessarily come with one more Apple 16C or 16D or whatever. It may be part of it, but there's a larger picture. I think if the youngsters can do that self-introspection, many of what we discussed will fall in place. It's just a matter of time. They have to coach their thinking along these lines. If they do it, many puzzles, that jigsaw puzzle will form that beautiful picture. And that is that great peaceful living, which ends with such a grace. And it was worth living this life. I think that vision must inspire them in every choice that they make. I think some of these choices, the tension will come down. I am not saying it will disappear, but it will dramatically come down.
This has been a fascinating conversation, sir. I think we touched upon many different aspects of good living and good life planning in some way. Thank you so much, Professor Mahadevan, for making the
Thank you,
time.
Professor Mahesh. I think you are doing such a wonderful job of bringing a lot of different ideas. You did mention to me a few of the, your podcasts and so on. I think this is a great service you are doing. I pray to the Almighty that this must keep going on and on and on, that this Loka Sangraha must happen in all its might and strength. Thank you for you and all your team for such a wonderful job.
Thank
And
you
for
so
this
much on
opportunity
this
also.
very auspicious day of Shankar Jayanti. Thank you for coming. This has been another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. Until we meet again, be well, do good, and keep in touch. Goodbye.